I'm going to talk about Matt Bauguess and his family who lived in the Lomax area of Trap Hill. Matt Bauguess, his full name was James Madison Bauguess Jr., and he was born in 1866 and died in 1961. He lived to be 94 years old, and over that time, he certainly saw a lot of events that happened in his area, and I want to talk about some of those as we go forward here. This is Matt Bauguess sitting on his front porch, looking east toward the rising sun in the morning. And here on the right, we have Matt with his wife, Julie Pruitt. Julie Pruitt. She was born in 1874, and they were married in 1892 when she was 18, and he was in his mid-20s. This is the only picture I have of Matt and Julie together. We'll talk about a little bit about where they lived. They lived along Billings Hill Church Road, just north of Stony Ridge School Road and south of where Bauguess Mill Road comes in. This is Matt Bauguss's, where his house was, situated right along the road and on the edge of the creek that flowed from east to west into, Little Sandy Creek. This was all part of land that originally was owned by Matt's grandfather, William Bauguess. William Bauguess was born about 1799, and he had a few hundred acres right in this general area, right along this creek actually. I believe, and I can't prove it, but I believe his house was right in this area, right where right at the head of the creek. He handed it down to his youngest son, James Madison Bauguess Sr., who in turn handed it down to his sons, going from east to west, son Hort, son Joe, who was the youngest, and probably lived in his father's house, who was also the youngest son, so he may have ended up living at the same place as his father, William Bauguess. So Hort, Joe, Matt, and then finally John. So they all owned land along the same creek. Matt owned about 90 acres, and I'll draw that out here. His house was on the along the western edge of his property. So this area here was in the 80 to 90 acre range. Right along this creek, which is still there, you can still see some of the cornerstones of his house and where it was. And then his brothers lived right along this same creek. John owned a lot of the land over here. Joe owned this land, and then Hort owned a lot of this area here. And then Matt's children and grandchildren ended up living right in this neighborhood. A lot of them are listed here. This is his daughter's house. His wife's family lived right over here. Julie Pruitt, this is where she lived. Her father is actually buried in this cemetery. So a lot of these families live really close together and for several generations. This is a really interesting picture. This was taken inside of Matt's house. There's a fireplace here with two windows, and I believe this is Molly, Matt's daughter Molly. Sherd, and right here, Deemy, and this is Julie Pruitt, Matt's wife. Some of these others somebody may recognize them and be able to identify them. They look somewhat familiar to me from other pictures, but I just don't know. I just don't know who they are. This guy's profile in the window looks like another picture that reminds me of one of Matt's younger sons, But again, it's hard to tell exactly who they are. Here's another picture, but from the outside of the house. This is Matt with his horse. You can tell it's a two-story house, and it's fairly large house, but considering that Matt and Julie had 12 children that grew to adulthood, you know, even a house this size was not large enough. That's a lot of people in one house. I'm going to draw a little sketch here of what I've been told his house looked like. There was a porch on the west side, and then this corner porch here. This is where Matt was sitting in the first picture that we talked about a few minutes ago. There was a chimney here. This was the kitchen. There was a bedroom of some sort here. There was another chimney back here. I believe that chimney is this chimney that they're standing in front of. So that this picture was taken right in here. Just behind the house, just behind this chimney, was a root cellar. Right, and it went underneath the road, and you can still just this is 2012. Just a few months ago, I walked through there, and there's still signs of the hole underneath the road where the root cellar is. So the kitchen is here. They would have kept food and other things they wanted to preserve in the cellar just behind the house. So as I said a moment ago, Matt and Julie had 12 children that lived to adulthood. They also had 6 that died as, you know, I guess they didn't reach the age of 2 most likely. And I'll run through their names here. The oldest was Molly. Then you had John, Aunt Bet or Betty, Deemy, Fish, Sherd, Charlie, Frank, Sally, Jack, Tracy, and Juanis. I list Maud here. I've only seen her name written in one place, and that was in a book compiling some information somebody else had collected on the family, but it gave no source information. I don't know where that name came from, if it's accurate, but I did find a birth certificate for an unnamed girl born in 1915, and there's a good chance that her name was Maud, and I just haven't found any documentation of that. This is another picture of Matt with his horse just outside of his house. And I'm going to pause here, and in the next video I'll talk more about these 12 children of Matt Bauguess and Julie Pruitt.